What's up YouTube? Nick here again with another controversial health topic. Today's episode we'll be talking all about the carnivore diet. All of this could also be applied to ketosis or the popular ketogenic or keto diet. So this is actually a video I've been wanting to do for a very long time, but people keep asking me my opinion on the carnivore diet specifically. I've put out some recent content about the physiology of ketosis and why I think it's something that nobody should be doing, why I think that people who promote ketosis all the time are actually doing tons of damage. And every time I actually watch their videos, I realize that they don't know the physiology of ketosis. Meaning, you couldn't ask these people, how is a ketone made? What does the body have to do to produce a ketone? Basically, about the extent of what they know is that ketosis is when your body uses ketones for fuel. Anyways, I don't want to get off on a rant or a tangent right now. If you want to know why I think the carnivore diet is something that's not sustainable for good long-term health, as well as the ketogenic diet, stay tuned. Okay, so there's actually tons I want to say about the carnivore diet and ketosis and the keto diet. But I'm gonna start off with some of the simple stuff. Actually, some of this might also not be commonly talked about stuff, but I'm gonna save the juicy stuff, the stuff that no one ever talks about. And if you knew this stuff, you would never go on a keto diet or a carnivore diet in your life. So for those of you that are gonna stick around to the end of the video, I got some good stuff coming your way. However, let's start off with some of the simple pros and cons of the carnivore and keto diets. Okay, so for those of you that do not know, the correlation between carnivore and keto is that a carnivore diet is completely devoid of carbs. It's a zero carb or no carb diet, which will put you into lipolysis, which liberates fat for fuel, and then eventually ketosis. However, a lot of the people that promote ketosis actually try to promote it sort of intermittently, at least from what I see, probably because it's not sustainable for long-term health. So that's why I said in the beginning of this video, all the information I'm going to apply to a carnivore diet, you can probably apply to keto as well. Okay, so getting the simpler stuff out of the way, one major issue that you can run into by adopting a keto or carnivore diet, at least if you don't do enough research and really know your stuff, is an inflammatory meat intake. One easy mistake to make on an all-meat diet or even keto and paleo is to consume only muscle meat or tissue. And this is problematic for a couple of different reasons, but the major one is the imbalance of amino acids you're consuming. You see, other than consuming low quality animal protein that's primarily fed polyunsaturated fats that attribute to cancer, the major reason that meat can be unhealthy in large amounts is when you only consume the muscle tissue. So when I say only muscle tissue, I'm referring to lean cuts of meats, only eating steaks and tenderloins and breasts, the stuff that's only meat with little to no fat and no cartilage whatsoever. And here's the major issue with this. When you only eat muscle tissue, those cuts of meats I just mentioned, you're getting a high amount, usually of tryptophan and methionine, in deficient levels of the amino acids glycine and proline. And very simply put, when you have chronically higher methionine and tryptophan to glycine and proline, these other amino acids, that's going to create inflammation. So now this is obviously not the biggest issue on a all-meat diet or paleo or keto, because you can obviously avoid this very easily. The simple way to avoid this imbalance and the inflammatory conditions related to it is to make sure that you're consuming not just muscle tissue. In few words, you're gonna wanna make sure that you're eating traditionally nose to tail style, which means that you're consuming as much of the whole animal as possible, including all of the organs, various gelatinous cuts of the animal, so the shank included, and even making bone broth from the bones. In addition to ensuring that you're consuming nose to tail when it comes to land animals, getting a wide variety of anti-inflammatory proteins, including things like shellfish, so like oysters and shrimp, as well as eggs and high quality dairy, will all ensure a balanced protein intake, avoiding inflammation. So my second major issue with the all-meat diet, and something that's actually easier to run into, especially if you're paleo or you tend to be keto, is the avoidance of dairy products and running into a calcium deficiency. You see, thanks to inaccurate flawed physiology and bad science, tons of people have been convinced that calcium is bad for you. Calcium is what contributes to the hardening of the arteries, the calcification of the soft tissues. However, that's simply not true. The fact of the matter is, when your calcium, dietary calcium, is chronically lower than dietary phosphate, there's an increased functioning of the parathyroid hormone and a hormone called prolactin. Both of these interfere with good thyroid function. They slow the metabolism, impairing energy production, and directly lead to inflammation. Not to mention that prolactin and parathyroid rob your hard tissue of calcium, increasing your risk for osteoporosis and tooth decay. Not to mention that a wide variety of degenerative disorders like erectile dysfunction, infertility, PCOS, and even baldness are all associated with high parathyroid and prolactin. So now there are a couple of different arbitrary issues you could run into on a carnivore or keto diet, like, as I mentioned earlier, consuming low quality animal products, basically not having enough discernment between the types of meat you're eating. Now, if you're somewhat of a nutritional or dietary veteran, you're probably not going to run into this issue, so it's probably not even worth diving any deeper into than that. However, getting into the meat of this video, pun definitely intended, let's talk about why and how a ketogenic diet, and a carnivore diet being a prime example of a ketogenic diet, greatly mimics the stress metabolism. So here's the stuff that no one really ever seems to talk about: the actual physiology of ketosis. What does it take for your body to create these so-called ketone bodies? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what it takes to put your body in nutritional ketosis, not just dietary wise, but physiologically speaking. Okay, so first and foremost, before we get into that, let's just understand that it is true that your body can, in some way or another, turn all of your substrates, your proteins, fats, and carbs into the primary cellular energy, glucose. But let's also emphasize the fact that I said primary, meaning the preferred energy for your cells is actually glucose, not fats, not proteins. Meaning that no matter what you eat, your body is going to take its substrates and convert it into glucose in some way or another. Some of these different ways are more stressful than others. Insert ketosis. You see, if all of your substrates can be turned into glucose, the real question is then, which of these has the maximum amount of oxygen? Because if you understand anything about the metabolism, you know that oxygen is the backbone for energy metabolism or energy production. Meaning that in the presence of glucose, you also need oxygen to fuel your cellular functions and produce ATP, and hopefully carbon dioxide. Now here's what happens when you go on a ketogenic diet. You're not getting dietary carbohydrates, which are the most easily and efficiently broken down into glucose. However, you have decided to not eat dietary carbohydrates and to instead get your glucose, or AKA sugar, from your fat sources. Now, as you could probably imagine, your body also agrees that trying to do this is a bit more challenging and a bit more stressful than getting it from sugar alone. In fact, in order to go into ketosis, you need to enter a metabolic state known as lipolysis, which is the common stress metabolism. And it's referred to as stress metabolism for two basic reasons. First and foremost, the presence of stress chemicals. In the past, throughout history, the only time you ever entered this state of lipolysis was if you were starving or there was a famine or intentionally fasting. In fact, a hibernating bear survives the long winter months without eating by entering lipolysis. And not to give everything away, but hibernating bears wake up diabetic and with hypothyroidism. But why is that? Well, you see, both of those conditions are heavily reliant on the increased functioning of stress hormones, particularly adrenaline and cortisol. You see, something that not many people ever really talk about is what it actually takes chemically or biologically to produce those so-called ketone bodies. In order to use fat for energy, which is ketosis, you must first liberate fat, which is lipolysis. And it is actually the job of adrenaline and cortisol that liberates the fats from your body to be used as energy, to be backwards converted or reversed through the Krebs cycle to break down the fatty acids into glycerols, turn those glycerols back into glucose. Now, Here's an issue in of itself. Not only do you need adrenaline to increase the rate of lipolysis, which is a stress chemical with negative side effects, but if you caught what I said there, only the glycerols from fats can be turned back into glucose. The liberated fatty acids tend to just circulate through the bloodstream, stimulating estrogen and more adrenaline and cortisol to keep you in lipolysis. Not to mention that elevated free circulating fatty acids in the blood is one of the key biomarkers of diabetics next to elevated cortisol. So what I'm hinting at here is that ketosis, or chronic lipolysis, mimics the biology or pathology of diabetes. Now, if this weren't bad enough, there's actually more trouble to talk about. As adrenaline and cortisol increase to increase the rate of lipolysis, they directly downregulate your thyroid. They slow your metabolism so you can live off less energy. The problem here is that it is your thyroid which governs the cellular utilization and regulation of oxygen. So as your thyroid turns down, not only does your metabolic rate turn down, but that means you have less available oxygen and less carbon dioxide. And let's talk really quick about the importance in the incredible anti-aging and protective effects of carbon dioxide, which is commonly referred to as a waste product. But the fact of the matter is, carbon dioxide is perhaps the most protective chemical or substance in your body. In fact, one of the major ways people used to test for cancer back in the day was they would measure their lactic acid to carbon dioxide ratios. Lactic acid is the byproduct of lipolysis in the stress metabolism, which makes the extracellular environment acidic, contributing to cancer and other degenerative diseases. And high lactic acid levels is the basic way to know that your carbon dioxide levels are going to be low, because it generally opposes the production of it. So other than regulating lactic acid production and protecting your body from lactate or lactic acid, carbon dioxide does something else very important. Oxygen tends to bind with hemoglobin, which makes it unavailable for cellular use, meaning your cells can't use it for functions like energy production. However, carbon dioxide attaches to the hemoglobin and detaches the oxygen from it, so that way your cells can actually be more oxygenated. So although it seems the opposite, carbon dioxide in its presence in the body actually increases tissue and cellular oxygenation, which is a good thing. However, that's not all that carbon dioxide does. Carbon dioxide changes every chemical, every protein, every hormone in your body. As an example, insulin, the hormone, is not the same under the presence of carbon dioxide. And to say a lot in a little bit, all of the substances in your body you become protected from under the presence of carbon dioxide. Meaning that if a hormone has a negative catabolic effect in your body, it is less destructive under the presence of carbon dioxide. And if I haven't made it clear by now, ketosis and lipolysis significantly reduces the production of carbon dioxide in the body, which is probably the number one problem with dietary ketosis and diets like the carnivore diet that are devoid of carbohydrates. However, there's other issues as well. For example, some organs and cells can't efficiently sub in free fatty acids for energy. For example, the hair follicle is incredibly glucose dependent and can't sub in fatty acids, which is why people tend to lose their hair when they're hypothyroid and diabetic. And as we learned, chronic dietary ketosis or lipolysis can greatly mimic that pathology. Now, obviously, I haven't said all that could be said about dietary ketosis and the carnivore diet, etc. There's tons of other videos out on YouTube and on the internet about things that I've probably not mentioned, so I just didn't want to be redundant. I wanted to bring you something new and different, something that, again, not many people seem to talk about when it comes to these sorts of diets. So if you're somebody that has been considering the carnivore diet for improving your health, losing weight, whatever reasons, or ketosis, now you have a bit more of a well-rounded physiological picture of what could happen to your body. And if you're curious as to what would be the better alternative, because obviously this video is not necessarily recommending a keto or carnivore diet, then definitely check out my healthy weight loss course, which will teach you how to eat for optimal metabolic function. And weight loss is really just one positive side effect of that. There's many, many others. So definitely check that course out if you want to know what I would think would be the healthier, more physiologically sound alternative to carnivore, keto, low carb, and most of the dietary trends out there. That brings today's video to a close. For those of you that have been asking me to create this video, don't forget to share it with your friends and family or anybody that would benefit from seeing it. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give that thumbs up button a big like. and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to see more videos just like this. Until next time, I'm Nick. See ya.